webinar on working with stakeholders. My name is Carly and I'm here with my colleague Sukanya from Bournemouth University in the UK. The aim of today is to help you identify and map local businesses and other stakeholders that you could work with for Speed You Up. It is also to help you build and influence collaborations with local businesses and other stakeholders for Speed You Up. How to approach this webinar. This video will take approximately 20 minutes to play, but you will want to add time to engage in the activities. You should pause the video where you need to and access the relevant materials to work with. In order to approach this seminar, it's important to keep an open mind. Perhaps there are some things that you haven't yet thought of, or some things that you thought were not a possibility, but upon working through these tasks, you may rethink how you might include them in your activities or approach them. And finally, you should apply what you learn. You should come away from today with some resources that you can use to move yourself forward in the Speed You Up project. Okay, so let's get started. On the screen, you'll see a QR code. You can access this via your camera on your device, or alternatively, you can put the following web address into a browser and it will take you to a Padlet. A Padlet is an online notebook and it's live, so whenever anyone accesses it, they can add things to it. So we would like your initial responses to these 3 questions. You can post your responses on the Padlet, and it's important not to overthink it, but to put down the first thing that comes into your mind. Question 1. What does business mean to you? Question 2. How would you describe an entrepreneur? And question 3. How do you feel about the Speed You Up project and your role in it? It's our aim to capture some general feelings towards the project and some of the terms that we'll be referring to.
So hello everybody, moving on, we look at entrepreneurship as an opportunity for our young adults. Young people have a whole range of skills that they can leverage through entrepreneurship, and we can empower them to seek opportunities and to take charge of their future. We often view entrepreneurship as a journey to setting up our own business. And in setting out to achieve any goal, the participation and support of others is absolutely critical. In entrepreneurship, who we know often becomes far more important than what we know. So what we refer to as social capital, the networks that we inhabit, our informal relationships, the existing relationships, and relationships that we seek to build, they can add further meaning to our journey towards the completion of that goal. So at the starting point, if one begins with taking stock of what we know, what they know, who they know, and how much they know, including, for example, how much financial capital they possess, then using those bases, one can work out a potential end goal with those means in mind. But in the journey to the aspirational end goal, we always discard some resources which may become increasingly irrelevant, and we gain some more that helps in improvising our goals. In today's world, with increasing digitization leading to far more networking opportunities, transcending the boundaries, seeking resources to achieve our goals is possible. Irrespective of where we want to set up our business, we can seek out funders, business mentors, support systems elsewhere. We just have to look at the power of crowdfunding in achieving entrepreneurial financial goals. And similarly, as with financial crowdfunding, so it is with crowd-based support in all avenues of entrepreneurship and in achieving the goals of SYU Up. Through SYU Up, we can enhance young people's growth and development, and we can prepare them for the changing world because we see them as opportunity spotters. Those of us who work with young adults can become the catalyst for igniting the entrepreneurial spark within them. There are various toolkits that SYU Up offers in helping you to create and inspire a remarkable future for the young adults that you work with through entrepreneurship. So, how do we identify those groups or individuals or support systems that we will refer to as stakeholders who can help us in achieving our dreams and goals? So we start off with understanding who or what is a stakeholder. A stakeholder is a person or a group of people or an organization who has an interest in the actions or the outcome of the actions taken by you or your organization. So they can either be affected by those actions or they have the influence and the power or the opportunity to affect your actions. If we look at this very broad definition, it becomes quite apparent that almost everybody can become a stakeholder. Therefore, it is really important that when we think of stakeholders, we start isolating groups of people or organizations or individuals who are primarily important to us and those who we want to build collaborations and relationships with right at the outset, and then think of the ones who we would refer to as secondary stakeholders. All the definition that we just highlighted now, they're particularly relevant in the context of engagement with young adults and their stakeholder groups in meeting and achieving the objectives of the SYU Up project. So let us take a look at what SYU Up participants are required to do and how could stakeholders help. Knowing the young people as you do, what skills, what knowledge and experience do you hope to achieve through the collaboration? At this point, you may want to refer to the modules on the SYU Up website. You may want to explore and identify the areas that stakeholders could help with. So just looking at them right now, whether they be in the skills development phase or the discovery phase or the dreaming phase, the pitching phase, the designing phase, or even the retrospective lessons, what we have learned by reflecting on the journey that we have been on in creating our business venture. It's really important to collaborate with the right set of stakeholders. So in identifying the right stakeholder or the right kind of people or organizations to collaborate with, it is useful to undertake an activity where we analyze stakeholder mapping. This can be done in various ways. We will provide an example via the Padlet, where you will see how to simplify the process of identifying stakeholders. To give you an example, say, for example, you want to lead a sports team. You want to manage a sports team. So the people that you immediately need in that activity or in achievement of your objectives of successful sports team would be the coach, would be the funding bodies, would be players of certain ability. But equally important would be the media, would be potential sponsors, could be spectators without whom there is no spectator sport. So it is important to think of all the groups of individuals or all the organizations who can come together to support you in your journey in achieving those objectives. Now, the alignment of stakeholders, they do shift depending on the circumstances, and stakeholders groups often consist of subgroups with unequal distribution of power. And therefore, power and influence become two very important factors to think about whilst we are working on our stakeholder maps. So certain things that we want to think about here would be, we want to identify stakeholders and what is their interest in this journey. So in the case of Speed You Up, who could you collaborate with? Who could be the people or the organization who can work with you in achieving these objectives, and what is their potential interest? You also need to clarify stakeholder views of the organization. So in the case of Speed You Up, you want to seek out their perspectives and their impression of the end goal and the objectives that you have with Speed You Up. Definitely, we need to identify the key strategic issues. Here would be, how are you building the relationships? Where are they coming from? Where are you coming from? What is their vision and goal? What is your mission and goal? And is there a good fit between the two? Only after we have done this kind of step-by-step activity of stakeholder mapping, then we can begin the process of identifying those coalitions of support and, equally importantly, those organizations or individuals that would not be suitable for a potential collaboration.
Collaborating with stakeholders. How do we influence the stakeholders that we choose or that we have mapped to work with us and ensure Speed You Up runs smoothly? At this point, you should have completed the stakeholder mapping exercise on Padlet, or put simply, have some kind of mind map of the people that you could potentially work with. In order to collaborate with and influence stakeholders, we are going to use something called the Cohen-Bradford Influence Model. The essence of this model is reciprocal. It's about influencing to nurture and build strong relationships that derives into effective and positive commitment from the stakeholder. This is particularly useful when you don't know the other person well, when you need their help and you have no authority over them, or that you don't have a good relationship with the person from who you need help. I'm going to walk you through the model. You should access and open the self-assessment template influencing model so that you can fill this in as you go. So feel free to hit the pause button throughout each stage of the model. At this point, it is helpful that you have just one potential stakeholder in mind. So go back to your stakeholder map, choose one to work with, and let's work through the model together. So let's start at the far left. Number 1, assume all potential allies. It's easy to see why most people would feel somewhat troubled and nervous at the prospect of influencing someone who they hardly know. This model cautions against writing anyone off. You should approach this scenario by considering the other person as a potential ally. So getting into the right mindset is the first step. The question for your self-assessment form here is, what is the main overlapping interest you both have? Fill in the self-assessment form for question 1. It may be, for example, to positively impact the lives of young people. Number 2, clarify goals and priorities. In this step, you need to establish why you are trying to influence this person. What exactly is it that you need from them? So the question here is, what is your common goal and priority? Do they align? And what does not align? The answer may be very different from question 1. For example, a big law firm might have the goal of achieving social responsibility targets in the most cost-effective way possible, and they may be driven by engagement targets and income. That's not to say they don't want to positively impact the lives of young people but their goals and priorities are different from the project or from the school, for example. Number 3, diagnose the other's world. This step requires you to understand your potential ally's world, including understanding how they are judged, or how he, she, or they are judged. For example, how are they rewarded? What seems to be important to them? To take the example of a law firm, each hour is seen as potentially billable, and therefore people's time is incredibly precious and potentially expensive. A law firm would consider time very carefully. The question here is to identify one constraint that affects your stakeholder. Number 4 is to identify relevant currencies. This is probably the most important step in the influence model. Here you need to identify what your potential ally truly values. And a currency is what someone values most. What does your stakeholder care about the most, and how can we help them achieve this? This may have to do with particular individual personalities or people that you're dealing with, and there are different types of people motivated by different things. The first is inspiration. People who value these currencies look for meaning in what they do. You can influence these people by explaining the significance of your request, the bigger picture or the higher purpose, and showing that it's the right thing to do. So in the case of Speed You Up, this is really about changing the lives of young people. The second is task related. These currencies relating to getting the job done. Note that an important task-related currency is challenge. Many people, especially those who want to expand their skills, look for the opportunity to work on challenging tasks, and they may see Speed You Up as a challenging task to take on. Number 3 is position. Position-related people value this currency because they focus on recognition and visibility. They want to race up the organisational hierarchy. You'll want to respond to this desire for recognition by publicly acknowledging their efforts. You could persuade them that the task will be recognised by respected people in your organisation or publicised in a newsletter or on social media. Number 4 are relationship-related people. These are people who value the relationships they belong to. They crave strong relationships with their team and colleagues. And it's essential to make these people feel are connected to you or your project on a personal level. Use active listening to offer them emotional support and appreciation. And finally, personal related people. Probably the simplest of all currencies. These currencies relate to the other person on a personal level. You can appeal to this person by showing them sincere gratitude for their help. Give them the freedom to make their own decisions if they're helping you on a team. The 5th stage of this model, in the orange at the top, is dealing with relationships. In this step, you need to think through what kind of relationship you have with this person. If you know them well and if you're on good terms, you can directly ask for what you need. For example, this might be a friend who owns a small business. But if you're not on good terms, or this is a complete stranger, you'll need to focus on building trust and building a good relationship before you ask for help. So the question here is, what is the nature of your relationship with the stakeholder you've identified? And how can you develop mutual trust? And finally, the last stage of the model is to influence through give and take. Once you think you know what your ally wants or needs, and you've determined what you have to offer in return, you can make the exchange and put your findings into action. The question here is, where can you be flexible with your stakeholder? For example, with a law firm, you might not expect them to dedicate too many hours and look to make collaborations as time-bound as time efficient as possible. They are likely to agree only a set number of hours and have a formal agreement with you. You can complete this model for each stakeholder. Sometimes comparing different stakeholders through this process can help you to adjust the approach that you take. The website address on this slide will take you to an interactive game-like version of this model where you can continue to explore different stakeholders in more detail. Should we formalise the agreement? Well, it's our opinion that it would be good practice to formalise any agreements in writing. This might be in form of a follow-up email to clarify your understanding of what was discussed, or it might be something more concrete like a charter. If this feels daunting, one way to achieve this, that's useful for building trust and a relationship, might be to invite the stakeholder in to co-create an agreement with the young people of Speed You Up. The stakeholder would draw up what they will offer, and the participants can do the same. A discussion can be had about what is feasible, what's realistic, what is relevant, and what both agree to do. This is a nice way to foster engagement, responsibility, and establish expectations. And finally, good luck working with your stakeholders, and don't forget to let us know how you get on.